I have some reference material here I recommend for engineers. Doesn't matter if you're in the military or in militia, still recommend them. These were a fairly common thing in the survivalist movement back during the Cold War, especially late in the Cold War. This basically is for in place of things like the anarchist cookbook. I would be more willing to use a recipe from one of these than from the anarchist cookbook. Manuals that I recommend are TM Technical Manual 31-201-1 Incendiaries from May 1966 and TM 31-210 Improvised Munitions Handbook from 1969. What little I understand on when these came out, these were designed for Special Forces, for Green Berets. They were a controlled item when they first came out. Obviously, they were declassified over time. They ended up on the civilian market. You used to be able to buy these as a set back in the 90s. A lot of places were selling them back then. When you look for copies of these, should you so choose to have with you in the field if something were to ever happen, or to have on hand for the defense of your property in a without rule of law situation, or SHTF, or the end of the world as we know it, Teotihuacan situation. I would try to find this type. Basically the older way it was done for manuals, cardboard cover, paper interior. I would try to get this and not something that's along this lines with the glossy covers. The ones with the glossy cover like this would be a later printing, and I would really question if the recipes inside have been tampered with. Where something like these, especially if you find older copies, they've seen some use, I would be more willing to trust them. Now, a note, if you try any recipes from this because you're in a situation where you have to, do an experimental batch first in very small amounts. That way, in case there's a problem, hopefully it won't get too big and majorly injure you. And then slowly scale up from that. Don't jump from, say making a small amount worth into producing hundreds of pounds, hundreds of gallons worth, and don't jump that far in, because there's no telling what may happen. There could be unintended reactions when you're using larger amounts, reactions that you can control at smaller amounts, but larger amounts you can't. If you attempt anything in any of these manuals, try to do a little bit of research, see if there may be something missing from that recipe, or there is a safety procedure that you should be employing. Example, in TM 31-210 Improvised Munitions Handbook, there is stuff in there on using acids for producing some of the materials. If you do that, make sure you use rubber gloves, not the dishwashing gloves you get in the store, or your latex gloves, or even medical rubber gloves. I would get NBC gloves, nuclear biological chemical suit gloves, and use those. Also, as a safety precaution, it says in here, have a bucket of water when you're dealing with the acids so that can be diluted if it spills. Recommendation on that is use a bucket of water with baking soda added in it, which will neutralize the acid. So if you were to get acid on your skin, quickly pour some of that onto you, or plunge your hand into it, whatever it is, to neutralize the acid quickly. Also, with incendiaries, obviously, watch your heat sources that are nearby, watch your temps. You don't want a Check the flash point, I should mention, on the materials that you use. Find the lowest flash point for a particular chemical. Use that as the, minimum, what you have to watch for. So check it out. I actually have a few videos I'm going to be doing on some of the stuff that's in these manuals for the Historic Ordnance series. And if I get enough battery left on my camera here, I'll start it right after this. Those will only be posted over at BitChute. They will not be posted at YouTube. So these are small, they're lightweight, only a couple ounces. You can toss them inside a rucksack. If you do that, put them inside a gallon Ziploc bag, protect them against moisture. Look them over. You can find electronic copies of these PDFs online, but I just am not 100% certain on those. Like I said, if you're going to attempt anything in here, look the recipe over first, do some research on it, find out if there's something missing or something has been added to it that would neutralize the effect that you're looking for. And if you do that, make sure to use a VPN, something like that, cover your tracks. It wouldn't hurt to have electronic copies of this to have around if needed, but I would really recommend paper copies. Paper copies are worth their weight in gold when there is no power to use that computer to access that electronic file. There you go. You should be able to find these out there. Like I said, look for that version, the old style military manual version. Now, for all my engineer brothers in the Patriot and militia movements, always remember, essayons.